So we're going to start off this morning by talking about dowsing. You all know what dowsing is. It's the science, or it's the practice of finding water or gold or whatever, oil, using your hands. And some people can really feel this energy with their hands, or they use various implements like dowsing rods. And we're going to practice a day doing dowsing with a pendulum. So when you talk about dowsing to any modern scientist, they just look at you like you're crazy, right? Okay. But it's actually an ancient science. And this photograph is of a dowser, and it's from an 18th century book about superstitions, okay? So when science came in, and Newton and all the different way of looking at things, they were kind of supplanting the church. When they talked about these ancient methods that people use, they said, well, this is just superstition. It's not this wonderful new science, okay? But in fact, the Earth is crisscrossed with lines of very low frequency energies, and these are called telluric currents. Now, back in the 18th century, they had no way of measuring these currents. So when people said they could feel things, they just thought they were crazy, or it was a superstition, right? And these currents are caused by magnetic fields, underground streams, veins of metal. They give off very subtle vibrations that the dowser is able to pick up. Some individuals are highly attuned to this. Jeffrey started out as a dowser on his farm in New Zealand. He could tell where the water was. He also doused this farm for us. Pretty much told us there was water everywhere under the farm, so it wasn't a problem digging a well. So, as I said, since the beginning of the scientific age, the ability to perceive subtle energies was regarded as a superstition. But today, our science has come a long way. We have much more sensitive instruments, and now we're beginning to validate these ancient practices. So, how dowsing works, divining rods and all these dowsing devices are a type of electroscope. They're picking up very subtle electrical currents. The dividing rods get charged with static electricity from the dowser's own body. We do have an electrical body, very faint, subtle frequencies. And this static electricity can be measured with a simple millivolt meter. So you can measure the static electricity that you put on a dowsing rod. The amount of voltage will vary depending on the person. A good dowser will have a high reading above 100 millivolts, while a poor dowser may read as low as 0 millivolts. So part of becoming a healer is learning to kind of increase your electricity, right? So that you can be a dowser, because you're not only looking to douse the currents in the earth, you're going to be dousing the human body, which also has very subtle current magnetic fields, electric currents, creating magnetic fields. So there was an article published in Popular Mechanics, and they decided to study dowsers, okay, and see how they did. So they looked at dowsers who were trying to locate water in more than 2,000 sites in arid regions of the Third World, Sri Lanka, Zaire, Kenya, Namibia, and Yemen, over a 10-year period. So this is a very well done study. And the researchers teamed with geological experts with experience, and teamed them with experienced dowsers, and set up a scientific study group to evaluate the results. Then after the dowsers told them where the water was, they had drill crews drill and look for water. They didn't hit water every time, but their success rate was very impressive. In Sri Lanka, for example, they drilled 691 holes and had an overall success rate of 96%. So the dowsers found water in these dry areas 96% of the time. Probably better than the geologists, okay? A lot less expensive. So Albert Einstein, he had something to say about dowsing. He said, "I know very well that many scientists consider dowsing as a type of superstition. According to my conviction, this is, however, unjustified. The dowsing rod is a simple instrument which shows the reaction of the human nervous system to certain factors which are unknown to us at this time." So Einstein wasn't calling it a superstition. He said, there's a science to this, and eventually we will be able to explain it. Now, we have a grid of energy lines on the planet, which until recently scientists considered this to be pseudoscience, another superstition. But today we have extremely sensitive instruments that can detect these energies. Plato, the Greek philosopher, recognized the pattern of the grids. He devised a theory regarding his belief that the Earth's basic structure evolved from a simple geometric shape to more complex geometric shapes. So this is the idea that our Earth is not just smooth, but there are these lines of subtle energies all over the Earth. And in fact, all the ancient monuments, important ancient monuments, were built within a half a degree of this circle you see here on the Earth. So that's a very strong energy circle. And when they built ancient monuments, they built them on this line of energy that they could feel. And the idea of the monuments was to magnify this energy. I'll tell you a story. We were on Martha's Vineyard, which was settled by the Puritans, so they would think this was all witchcraft, right? Okay. But Jeffrey said, "Stop, I want to go into that church." And we went into the church, and it was like an old whalers church. So these were Puritans, and he said, and over the altar was this conical indentation in the ceiling. And there was a very strong energy spot on this altar, and the church had been built to magnify that energy spot. So did they do it just by instinct? We don't know, but if you had asked them about energy spots, they would have told you it was witchcraft. But there it was, right there in Martha's Vineyard. So again, here is a scientific paper about telluric currents. And scientists are now studying these with specialized instruments, but a dowser doesn't need these instruments. He can feel these currents with his dowsing rod or even with his hands. And there's even an article about telluric currents in Wikipedia, which is, of course, I'm not going to write an article about anything that's too woo-woo, but basically they're saying these currents are lines of extremely low frequency that travel over large areas or near the surface of the Earth. So again, the dowser can pick these up. How many of you have done any dowsing? Okay, so quite a few. Yeah, good. So standing stones, temples, and churches are sited over these special spots on the Earth's surface. And Jeffrey believes that there are two types of spots. One is an energy spot and one is a sacred spot. Okay? Now the energy spot is just there where two lines cross, for example, or where the energy is particularly strong, but he believes a sacred spot is a spot where human beings put the energy in through their practices over their spot, or something very important happened on this spot, and the energy still lingers. He has found that virtually all standing stones, temples, and churches built before 1900 are constructed over a sacred spot or an energy spot. In a few cases, they are constructed over one of each. In most ancient cathedrals, the energy spot is under the baptismal font. So that's a fun thing for you to do as you are developing your skills as a healer, is to go into some of these ancient buildings. Even in Washington, D.C., there's a lot of energy spots in Washington, D.C., and the buildings are built over them, like the Washington Monument. Extremely strong energy spot there. And try to do this with a pendulum or with your hands. I see a hand Nodding. Have you felt these spots?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
very much so. Yeah. We used to live across from the Building Museum, which is a beautiful building. It was built as a government bureaucrat building, but there is a very strong energy spot inside, yeah, between two columns. Yeah. Anybody else felt energy spots in these cathedrals or churches? So we have a head nodding here, yes. Like all cathedrals, the Washington National Cathedral is built over an energy spot. But what's unusual about this cathedral is that the energy spot is not under the font or the altar, but it's right when you go in the door. Right there in the doorway. So next time you go to the cathedral, see if you can feel that energy spot. There was a researcher, he's gone now, his name was Phil Callahan, and he believed that people erected standing stones, monuments, etc. on these spots as a way of increasing the fertility of the soil. So for example, all over Ireland, they had these round towers, and he believes that those were built on energy spots and they radiated the energy out into the fields and gave them fertility. He visited, actually it was both of us, we visited a vegetable garden in Wisconsin where they had set up a little pyramid over an energy spot right in the middle of the garden. So the pyramid is magnifying that energy. It was the luscious garden that we had ever seen. So in the past, individuals sensitive enough to pick up these energy spots would have been highly valued in these cultures. Now, the Washington, D.C. was designed and all the buildings were sited by the Masons, and they seemed to know where those energy spots were. There is an energy spot under the dome of the Capitol building, as I said, inside the Building Museum, and a very strong one where the Washington Monument is. So, and then we have the cathedral, and so the whole city it's a wonderful city for that reason, because it's just kind of vibrates with that good energy. So they did a really interesting study on dowsers, brain patterns characteristic of dowsers. And they found there's delta, theta, alpha, and beta brain states, okay? So delta is when you're in a deep sleep. Theta is dreaming sleep. Alpha is falling asleep. And normal waking is the beta. Okay, that's what we're all in now, beta, okay? Transcendental meditation combines alpha and theta. Zen meditation and what they call lucid awareness combines beta, alpha, and theta, okay? But what was interesting about the dowsers is when they were dowsing, they were in a state that combined all four patterns. So delta, theta, alpha, and beta. So I wish I knew how to help you get into that state. I don't know how to do it, but it's a very special state that the dowser or the healer goes into when they're doing this. So it's not just a waking state, yes.
Are you asleep or you're awake?
You're awake. You're awake, but so you have that waking consciousness, but you have a that, you know, when you fall asleep or you first wake up, that's a very special kind of consciousness. That's when I know when I wake up, there's I have to do this today, and here's what I need to do about this that I didn't know what to do about. You know, when you don't know what to do about something, you always put it under your pillow, so to speak, and when you wake up, you know what to do. That's that alpha consciousness. So most of us have experienced the beta and alpha together. We're waking up, we're awake, but we still have that kind of dreaming state where all our ideas come to us, things that we know we should do. So we need to combine that with the dreaming state and the asleep state, all four at once. Yes?
What about when you sleep and you're dreaming and talking, and actually the person looks like is alive, but actually is asleep?
It's a dream. Oh, the person, you mean in the dream?
Yes.
So you're dreaming, but you're talking to a person, and it's
Like you're having a conversation, but you actually are.
yeah. I think that's very special. I don't know what state that is, but yeah, that's why you're so talented, Ina. Because she can talk to people in her sleep. So have any of you experienced this sense of being in more than one level of consciousness at the same time? This dear lady, yeah, yes, yes. Well, we need people like you. So the way we recommend getting started is to use a pendulum. And we're going to do some practicing with the pendulum when we're through here. We can use the pendulum to detect energy spots and also to get answers to questions. It's almost like your subconscious mind or your theta state knows, but your waking state doesn't know, okay? Your mind needs to be very clear to use the pendulum. You almost have to get into this fourfold state that we're talking about. And there's certain questions you never want to ask the pendulum, like, does he love me? Or will he marry me? Or am I going to be rich? Or anything like that. You don't ask those questions. But you can ask, is this food good for me? Okay, should I eat this? Should I take these vitamins? And if you get a yes, and well, how many? And how many, how often? Should I do this today? So you can get answers like that. Yes?
The question that I ask is, should I use the pendulum today?
That's good. So the question he asks is, should I use the pendulum today? Right, okay. Okay, now we were talking about energy spots on the earth and telluric currents and grid lines on the earth, but we all know that the body has its own grid lines. The Chinese have known this for centuries. This acupuncture is based on this. So there's certain points on our bodies and certain currents in our bodies, and the whole science of acupuncture is based on this. So what you are training to do is to pick up these currents in the body and areas of disharmony, as Jeffrey calls it. A good dowser can pick up these spots in the body just the same as he can find them in the earth. You can practice finding energy spots, and then you can start practicing on the body. So we are all on a journey. It's been a journey that's lasted thousands of years with many, many incarnations. We came from the spiritual world. That's what the Bible tells us. That's what many religions tell us. And we have slowly moved away from this spiritual world until we're totally entrapped in a body and we can't access that world anymore. And that is called the fall. That's what the fall means, okay? In our earlier incarnations, we were still in a dreamlike state. So why were we pushed out of paradise and had this fall? Because so we can become an individual, right? Because before we were, we were part of our group and we didn't make decisions for ourselves, okay? Everybody had psychic powers. We all were connected to this world. And then with each incarnation, we got further and further away from the spiritual world, and it really panicked people. And so they were always trying to access that world again, and that's why they had initiation rites. That's why they had meditation. They had certain drugs that would help them re-access the spiritual world. A fasting or a vegetarian diet was going to help them kind of get into that state where they could go, remember what it was like and get information from the spiritual world. Unfortunately, that's not very easy for most of us. We're completely immersed in matter. The old methods of access to the spiritual work are not appropriate anymore. And now we have to find that spiritual world again as an individual. Okay, this is what we are in training for, to return, but as an individual. Okay, and there is a story. It's in the Bible. I'm sure it's in other religions about how this happens. You know what the story is? I get choked up every time I talk about it. It's the story of the prodigal son, the parable of the prodigal son. And he's completely immersed in matter. He's feeding pigs, right? He's eating the pig food. And he suddenly doesn't want to do this anymore. He wants to get back. And of course, when you start on that journey back, the Father comes out to meet you. All the beings of the spiritual world start to make contact with you. And that's your journey back. Takes many incarnations, but I'm sure that all of us sitting here are on that journey back. And what was the food for the prodigal son? What was the feast that the Father prepared for him? It was fat beef. Okay? They say the fatted calf. Apparently a better translation is a fat ox. Okay? So this is a very healthy food for us, and because it helps build our minds. So you don't have to be on a special diet of deprivation. It should be a very healthy diet. You want to have a healthy body, because in the old days, before, as we were, falling, the spirit was in the temples, right, and in the mystery places where they had the mystery religion and everything. Where is the spirit today? It's in our bodies. Our bodies are the temples today. Temples built without hands. So we want to take very good care of our bodies, especially as healers. You really want to be healthy. So you have to understand what kind of diet creates the most health in the body. So how does the fully individualized, fallen modern man, that's all of us, right, re-access the spiritual world? How do we get back? First of all, you need to be completely honest with yourself and others. Honesty is the best policy. Okay. And then secondly, you need to do your life's work conscientiously and thoroughly. Whatever has been given to you. Maybe you are a healer. Maybe you're a teacher. Maybe you're a garbage collector. Maybe you're a cook, a chef. Maybe you're a photographer. Whatever has been given to you, you do it to the best of your ability. And finally, be aware of your state of consciousness when you first wake up, because at that point you're at least in 2 states of consciousness, and maybe even 3. You're still kind of dreaming, you're waking up, and you're awake. And then we have to add that being fully asleep consciousness. But this is something that it's good to be aware of as you wake up. You're in several different states of consciousness at once, okay? And that's when the answers come to you. Certainly it's when I'll go to sleep at night, I've got some situation, I don't know what to do about it. And when I wake up, the answer's there, okay? Now there is a wonderful symbol of the human being, the soul or the spirit, going back and developing their third eye, which is how we're going to do this on the journey back. You know what that symbol is? It's the unicorn. It's a wonderful symbol of how we are going to penetrate through the mists and get back to the spiritual world. So let's kind of switch now to this actual practice of energy healing. There hasn't been a lot of science on this. There should be. But there was a study done by a nurse and teacher at New York University, and it was with a Hungarian healer named Oscar Estebani. He treated 49 patients. They had a broad range of illnesses, And then there were 29 patients who served as controls, okay? So he treated all these people, the 49 people, and what they found was that the hemoglobin levels increased in the ones who were treated. So hemoglobin is your red blood cells. You have more energy, less anemia and so forth. So the ones who were treated really were better, and they could measure that. And the result lasted for a full year after treatment. So it really worked. But even if you're not getting somebody completely healed from a condition, the healing still has benefits, especially, it seems, in increasing the hemoglobin levels in the blood. So Jeffrey's philosophy is that true healing is a two-way street. You're not just passive with the healer doing something to you. The patient has his job to do, okay? So people think that healing is something that is done to them, either by a doctor or a healer. But true healing requires effort on the part of the patient, whether you're going to a conventional doctor or whether you're seeing a healer. Whenever you're sick, whenever something's not right in the body, it's the message from the universe. Yes, healers can help, doctors can help, but it means that there's something you need to do as well, okay? And so what Jeffrey requires of the patient, first, to be receptive to the energy of healing. Secondly, to have goals. So many people don't have goals at all. And nothing to do with being healthy or, getting over your cold or whatever, but goals, things you want to accomplish. Short-term goals and long-term goals. Fourth, a change in the way of thinking. You need to kind of heal your thinking. And fourth is a change in the way of eating. And this is something unique to Jeffrey's method. He really does want you to look at how you're eating and see how you can improve your diet. When the patient is willing to change, the work of the healer, whether it's an energy healer, alternative practitioner, or a conventional doctor, will be much more effective. So you want to go out in the world and be healers, you need to be familiar with the kind of diet that makes people better. And we strongly believe that's the diet of the Weston A. Price Foundation. You want to open up your folder and see that red pamphlet? Yeah. So that's why I put this in your folders. This is your homework assignment. It takes about an hour to read. I call this the most subversive document on the planet, because if everybody ate this way, we wouldn't need all the doctors we have today. So that's a very important part of his healing method. So I'll just give you a little background about Jeffrey. He had a farm in New Zealand, a dairy farm. He milked 100 cows twice a day for 30 years. And he got a lot of thinking done while he was milking cows. He kind of put himself in that state we're talking about. And he practiced dowsing and pendulum work on his farm. In 1976, that was a turning point for Jeffrey. He went to see a famous healer called Colin Lambert, who was doing a healing on the stage, and he felt as though his hands were right up there on the stage doing the same work as this healer. 3 days later, he called on some friends. The wife was suffering from nausea from chemotherapy, and she invited him to work on her, and her nausea disappeared. So that encouraged him to keep going. In the early days, Jeffrey found that he had guides whom he could visualize in a meditative state, and they instructed him for several years on the various ways to do this. After that time, he was told he didn't need them anymore. He also had an experience that could be called an opening of the pineal gland. It occurred, he was at a retreat. It was a weekend-long meditation. And towards the end, everyone was having these wonderful experiences. He thought, oh, this has been a complete waste of money for me. But the guru came around, and he had a peacock feather, and he just tapped him on the head. And bounced on his head. And then pressure was applied to his forehead, and he felt this tremendous whoosh, this release. Came right from the solar plexus right up through the crown chakra. And he had a searing pain between the eyes for 5 days, right here. And after that, it opened his pineal gland. And after that, he was able to see through this third eye. He could actually, if he turned it on, he could look at people and tell where their problems was without even dowsing. So that is a state to aspire to, right? So the technique that Jeffrey does has several steps. And first is to clear the aura of negative energy. So after our break, we're going to put a volunteer on the table. And before Jeffrey clears them, we're going to see if you can feel that negative energy in the aura. Then he douses the body for areas of disharmony. He also asks if there are any entities with the body. And about 5% of people have an extra spirit, and most of them know it. It could be their grandmother who passed on. I know that when my sister-in-law passed on, I was hanging up towels in the bathroom, and I could feel her right there. And I had to tell her to go away because I didn't want an extra spirit. So you have to be careful of these things. So he clears the entity. Recently he had someone who had 5 entities. You can't function properly when entities are living in your body. Restore the energy to the areas of the body that need healing. On some occasions, he uses the energy from his hands to perform a kind of psychic surgery. Then he uses his fingers like a pendulum to determine the vitamins and minerals that the body is lacking. Then he likes to point out the psychosomatic reasons for illness. He uses Heal Your Body by Louise Hay, or another book we've recently discovered, Permanent Healing by Daniel Condren. And then he directs the subject to the joy of living. These are his I am affirmations, something we should say often. I know that my bad habit is to worry. So many things to worry about. And when I met Jeffrey, he handed me his card, and he circled the second to the last one. I am too large for worry. So he knew that I was worrying, and he circled that one. Don't you do this, okay? So these affirmations are on his brochure, and they're on his card and in his book, and yeah. Truly, he says, we are what we think. So resources, the Weston A. Price Foundation for accurate, trustworthy information on diet and health. Heal Your Body by Louise Hay, or Permanent Healing. And then also my cookbook might be helpful also. All right. So any questions so far? Any questions? Yes?
The slide before this one and then before that one. Can I just want to...
Oh.
Was that what you did? Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, yes?
Yeah, I've read that if you are healing people, that you are also healing yourself at the same time.
Yes. Yes.
So, doctors only heal the patient, but healers
Heal themselves
at the same time.
Yeah. Now, Jeffrey always, when he starts, he asks for protection, and when he's finished, he asks for protection. Because you're very vulnerable when you're doing this. So he puts the white light around himself. Also, when he wakes up in the morning, puts that light around himself. Look at him, he's 97 years old. Huh? Look how well he's doing. So I thought it'd be fun now to do a little practice with the pendulum. So if you could all get your pendulums out, I'm going to get one as well. Hold on. So some people came in late. Does everybody have a pendulum? Who needs a pendulum? Who? Anybody else? Okay. So first of all, we're just going to hold it over our hand and let it be as still as possible. These are very sensitive pendulums, so they won't be completely still. Now, without moving your hand at all, you're just going to tell it to go back and forth. Just back and forth. Without, you've got to hold your hand very still. See? Mind over matter. Okay. Back and forth. Tell it to go back and forth. There's one over there. Put your concentration on it. Now you're going to tell it to stop. Did you get it to stop? Yeah. Okay. Now you're going to tell it to go counterclockwise. And you got to keep your hand completely still. There's one that's really swinging. All right, now tell it to stop. Okay, and now you're not moving your fingers to make it move, right? It's just the energy coming through your hand into that string, telling it to stop. Okay, now tell it to move clockwise. Okay, got it moving? All right, now tell it to stop. Okay, so now we're going to calibrate them because the yes and no are different for everybody. So hold the pendulum up and tell it to give you a no. What is a no? Mine had to think about it a little bit. Give me a no. Okay. Now tell it to stop. And now tell it to give you a yes. And then tell it to stop. Okay, so this is a good thing to practice, maybe once a day. You'll get better and better. And also, I would calibrate it before you're going to ask it any questions, including your question, can I use the pendulum today, right? Get it to tell you that yes and no, because sometimes it changes. Okay. So this is a very, yes?
What would be, from your experience, the reason why a pendulum wouldn't want you to use it?
You're just learning. Just keep, oh, for the day? Well, ask this fellow right here.
No, no, I'm talking about, in general, what would be, from your perspective, if you asked it, why would it tell you, what would be a reason why it would tell you that?
Maybe you're just not in the right frame of mind that day. Or maybe the universe knows that you'd be tempted to use it to ask the wrong questions. Okay, and then most of you have a pendulum that's very unique to you. You might have an old ring that you tie on a string. I have a little brass pendulum I like because it's a bit heavier than this. Yeah.